Hi, and welcome back to Plastic Models by a Regular Dude and the viewer's choice build of the M4A1 Sherman by Eduard. So last video I did the lower hull assembly, back plate assembly with all of the associated parts, including the air filters. So next up is the three-piece transmission cover. I'm using this one because I am doing markings D, and that's what it calls for. So I've already got the parts cleaned up and ready to go. So what I did is I divided them up left and right. So there we go. So the first thing I'm going to install is C45, which is for the tow hooks, toe clevises, whatever you want to call them, because they go in a pretty tight spot there. I'm going to use the same method I used on the ones on the back, and glue them in. Apply the cement. Whoops, try and do it without. There we go. Apply the cement from behind. And give it a good push so it will really snuggle in there and look like a weld as opposed to just a part stuck on there. Okay, so there's one, and then the other one, same way. Squish that into place. Voila. There you have it. Now I'm going to check something out here. C52, which is the side here of the, I guess that would be the part of the final drive housing. And I'm going to test fit that. See how much room. So I better also install these parts as well, because if I don't, I won't be able to get them on there after I put these parts on. So I'll have to kind of guesstimate where they would be. Dangling straight down. That looks pretty good. I want a kind of a 90-degree angle to this flat portion here. Alrighty then, and then we'll do the other side as well. Whoops. Like that. Make sure that one's dangling properly. about like that. Okay, so I think I'm going to let that dry just for a second. So I don't knock them loose when I start gluing these other parts on. So while that is, you know what, let's do this. So while that's drying, I can go ahead and do F27 and J7, which are the fender parts. So I want to make sure that there's no weird, there's a bit of plastic right here. Make sure that fits nice and flush. Alright, so I'm gonna have to tack this in place, so put a little cement on there. This needs to slide over just a little bit. Okay, now one thing to remember is I can get this glued into place, and then if I have to, I can use the cement to loosen it up a little bit to cock it one way or the other if necessary. Like that. Make sure it's as much of a 90-degree angle as I can. Alright, set that aside. Alright, so I think this is probably dry enough now, so that in position like that, and then doing like normal, I'm going to apply the cement from the inside. Just make sure I'm not touching anywhere. I think I'll do this top part first. Hold that top part in place for a second while it cures up. And then do the bottom. Hold that in place. And make sure that sticks. And as you can see in the bottom here, probably right there by my fingernail going this way, a little bit of that cement has oozed out, which means that's melting it together really nicely. Okay, so we got that. Then the next part are these pieces here. Which are the bolt strips that hold the pieces together of the, I'm going to do this side first. This 3-piece transmission housing. And there is a top and a bottom, so make sure you get it right. Yowza. Just like that. And see, this is kind of nice because a lot of kits don't. This is one piece instead of 2 pieces, so you don't get this nice seam down the middle. Okay, you want to make sure these are even up here. Alright, so that's in place. What I'm going to do is I'm going to apply my cement down here in the bottom. And the top, right there. Okay. And that looks good. I could put some cement in there and squeeze that together, and I think I may do that. Just so it looks nice and even without a gap. I just don't want to squeeze it too much because I don't want the cement to come seeping out of that crack, that seam. So I'm going to do it down here. I'm going to hold that for a second and let it cure up. Okay, so that's all the parts on that side. So I'm going to go ahead and put all these parts on this side the same way. No need to make you watch that 2 times in a row. So I'm going to put that together and then come back and we'll put this bolt strip right here on. Okay, I got the other parts put on, and now I just need to put this bolt strip. And I don't know if you can really see, but there is a top and a bottom to this. This lower edge is flat. That goes down on top of this part here. The upper part has kind of a angle thing going on. Just make sure you get it. I don't even think it'll go in incorrectly, but just something to watch for. And then get that in place like that, and then put a nice little bead of cement on there. Make sure it's nice and snug. Hold it in place for a second. And that finishes the transmission housing. So set that aside. And next, it'll be time to move on to the upper hull. All right, with the transmission cover done, I can move on to the upper hull parts. So the first thing I'm going to do is C30 and C31 and the PE that goes on them. So I'm going to cut the parts off first. Make sure they're cleaned up. And then we need 25 and 26. Just here and here. Get those cut off. This is some very, very fine photo etch. So if you're using this stuff, be careful, because it is really, really delicate. Okay, so now what you need to do too is you need to pay attention, because there are two sides. One side has is more three-dimensional than the other, and the other side is really flat. That side is much more three-dimensional. And as you can maybe hear outside, there is a military helicopter flying over, but I'm not going to jump up and see what it is, because we get a lot of them in with our proximity to the aeropuerto. That's airport in Spanish. Let's see. So let's get this on here. Whoops. This on here. Let's see how it fits. Okay, it looks pretty good. So before I can put it on there, though, I need to get my CA glue ready, and for that I need one of my handy dandy long reach super fine spouts. Whoa. Okay. So let's see, how do I want to do this? I think I will use my clamping tweezers here, because I don't want to get this stuff on my finger and glue the part to my finger accidentally. Okay. And basically what I'm going to do, if I can do this without, shaking like a bleeding leaf, get a little bit on the end there. God, and do that. Good Lord. There. That was close. All right, so I got that on there. It's ready to go. So let me do up the other one, and we'll come back and start cutting out more of these parts and gluing them on the upper hull here. Okay, I've got all the parts cut out that I need. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to assemble this sub-assembly here, which is the exhaust. So I'm going to get these assembled, and then that way I can set it aside to dry while I'm putting the other small parts on on the upper part of the hull. Make sure they're lined up properly. They fit pretty good. They've got like a little square locating part on the exhaust and then a notch, corresponding notch in the other part. So we got that. So let's do J31 first, which are ventilators. And there's one here and one here. So, and the nice thing is they've got these little locators here and on the ventilator. So just make sure you get it going the right direction so you don't get it looking all wobbly. Okay. And like I always like to do, put the cement on from the back. That way it lessens the chance of marring the visible surfaces on the front. If you can't see how to line them up, just twist it until you feel it. Pop into place like that. Okay, so the armored ventilator covers are in place. Let's see, C27, which is this little tiny part here, which I think it might be the, I'm not really sure. So anybody correct me if I'm wrong and let me know what this is. But I think it's the extinguisher system for the engine compartment. The actuator for it. But I could be wrong. But I think that's what it is. So let me know if you know for sure. If not, I'll have to look on one of my wonderful Sherman web pages and find out what it is. Let's see. So then we've got D2. Now, if you're familiar with Tamiya kits, these lifting eyes, which are what these are, D2 in this case, they're flat on the bottom, they fit in place, and they work really great. But these are kind of nice because they have little locator pins, so it makes it a little bit easier to locate them and get them in place. Put a dab of cement on each side. Put it in place. Give it a little squish down. I'm going to add a little bit more because this is not one of those things that it's welded on. And if you let that cement dissolve, or that plastic dissolve just a little bit, and then give it a little smash, it'll eliminate that seam just like that. So then we have a similar piece. Just make sure you have the little burr off of it from where it was attached to the sprue. D1, which is longer on one side because it fits on the front slope of the armor here. Now the nice thing about the ones in the front is they go all the way through, give you a really good solid location on there, so you can do the cement from behind if you like. It'll seep up through there, and then just give it a little squish like normal, and there you go. Excuse me. All right, then we have part of the bow machine gun. Ball mount. So put that in place, and then I'm going to do the same thing. Put a little cement from behind. Thusly. All right, so then we have F26, which is one of the filler caps. Now I never can remember if that's fuel or coolant, because there's multiple ones and I never can remember which one's which. There's a couple of locating pins on here that, if you can hold on to the part, help you get it in the right position. Holy Toledo. Oh, man. There we go. Okay. So let me put a little dab of cement in there. Now what's nice is if I guess you could model these things open. It'd take a little work, but you can actually see the filler cap there. That may not be enough cement. Let's see if I can get some in from the side over here. I don't want too much. There we go. All right. Okay, so on these parts here, these vents, once you get them glued into place and they've set up really well, you'll want to check and make sure that there's no portions of it kind of sticking out past this cover part here. The photo etch, you don't want the photo etch sticking up. So there was just a little bit on there, so all I'm doing here is just using my sanding stick and smoothing that out. Whoops, I'm smoothing that out to where it's not sticking out from behind. Same on this one. And it may not matter, but what I'm doing is I'm dragging my sanding stick this way to keep this pressed, because if I go that way, there's a possibility if you're, if you didn't get enough CA on there, it could pop off. And if it pops good enough, it may just go flying off into oblivion, and you sure don't want that, because that's a tiny part. And people often refer to what happens with these parts if you drop them is being eaten by the carpet monster or something like that. Well, I don't agree with the whole carpet monster thing. I think that carpet really is some kind of portal to another dimension, and if you drop something there, you can just forget looking for it, because it's somewhere else entirely. It's gone. It is in a different universe, a parallel universe, if you will, and you're never going to see those parts again. So, get some food for thought. It's just as human beings and pets and stuff like that, they're just too large to fit through the portal. So only model parts are allowed, or other really small things. Alright, so I'm going to put the cement in from the back, just like I normally do. It works better. Like that. Alright, and then I have the two remaining lifting eyes. Right here. Some of you may be thinking, wow, you're awful shaky today. Well, it's my typical problem. I've already had a couple of cups of coffee this morning, and the caffeine is coursing through my veins, and I haven't really eaten anything, so I don't even know if that really has a bearing on it, but it seems if I chug down some coffee on an empty stomach, that sometimes I can be even more shaky than usual. So I'll get this other lifting eye in the front. Oh my word. Like that. I know some of you may watch my other videos and know that I have built many other Shermans in the past, particularly monograms, old 1/32 scale, Screamin' Mimi. That was my first armor kit ever, and that is why the M4A1, the cast hulled Shermans, hold a special place for me. I just really, really enjoy the M4A1 series. I mean, number one, I mean, a casting of this size, that's just like, that's crazy. You know, I mean, to me anyway. But it's really cool. Oh, you know what? Before I glue this on, there are some photo etch parts that go on here. So let me get those cut out real quick, so I can put those where they belong. I think they're a type of deflector or something. PE43, which is right here. So we got two of those. Now it's kind of weird. These are kind of a different color. Seem to be textured a little bit, which I'm assuming will help with putting some rust colored effect on there. But I'm just guessing, because the same discoloration or different coloration from the rest of the PE is also apparent on some of the other parts, including the tie-down straps. So maybe that's just to help with painting. Man, these are like really super thin. Tell you what, this photo etch, whoever makes it, it's stamped Eduard, but it could be made by somebody else. I don't know, but it is some super fine stuff. Super fine stuff indeed. Man, oh shivets, that is some really thin photo etch. And my blade's starting to get dull. This is a good example of why a good blade is essential. And I know some of you are probably looking saying, man, you're a cretin the way you're cutting that stuff out. Barbarian, Philistine, whatever. Well, I am proud of it. Holy smokeroonies, man. Ah. Okay, that's off of there. So I'm going to sand those edges where the where it was attached. It's actually a pretty clean cut for a change. Now, it looks like they're curved, so I need to find something to make the curve with, so give me a minute. Okay, here's what I'm using. I'm just using a regular old toothpick / cocktail stick, and I'm holding it on and just smashing it down. And it's working nicely. So voila, nice little curved pieces. So then they go on the underside of this, the edge of this exhaust pipe here. Yeah, right there like that. So put a little bit of I think for this I'm going to use my acrylic hobby glue, Gator's Grip brand, because that will allow me to get it positioned without worrying about it setting up too quick. There you go. So that's working pretty good. Really like this stuff because it holds really good, especially for parts like this. Gives you time to get it positioned, and gives you a really good bond, especially on flat parts like this. And it's easy to get it on there because you just set it on there, it kind of tacks into place, and then you can just slide it around and get it positioned properly. So good stuff. Difference between it and PVA glue is this is a bit thicker than PVA glue. So this part is going to give me some trouble. There we go. All right, so let's get this glued in place. Just like that. Okay, I'm going to set this aside and let it cure up for a minute. And real quick, like, I need to get this PE57, which is the chain for this cap right here. Okay, so here's a little piece of chain, and you know, it's got to kind of sit natural. So what I'm doing is I'm bending it kind of into the curve that I want, because it basically hooks onto this little lever here and onto this armored cover. So Now you got to be careful because since it's flat and you try and bend it, it's going to just make like an arc, and it needs to lay kind of more naturally. So I curve it and then I smash it down like that to where it actually looks like a piece of chain. And I'm going to try with every one to make it look a little bit different. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to kind of turn that edge up a little bit so it'll rest up against that plate. Okay, and then this is some delicate work, man. I got these big old fingers and it can be quite difficult. Whoa, quite difficult at times. There we go. Okay, so then very carefully, I think I'm going to use this time. My little homemade CA glue applicator. One of my specialized super glue holding devices here, and then carefully and hopefully get it into place like that. All right, just like that. So that pretty much concludes this portion here. So now we can move on to the rest of these details and putting the main three parts of the lower hull together. All right, with C29 glued in place, I can now put the, glue the machine gun in like thusly. Just like that. You know what though? I am going to make sure that this is today's freebie tip, especially on rounder parts. If you can put where the sprue gate was, where it attached to the sprue, if you can put that on the bottom, you might as well. That way, if it wasn't cleaned up exactly right, it'll be inconspicuous. Okay, got that glued into place. All right, well, let's drying up this part right here, which, if I'm not mistaken, that is the, that is the deal that they can snap a cover to. What I'm going to do is I'm going to cut it away from the deal because it's pretty pretty fine plastic and I don't want to break it. So I'm cutting it away from the parts, or the part, to get that little piece of sprue out of there. And then carefully cut the remaining plastic off. Oh, like that. A little bit of skin too. This one's kind of tough because it's in that curve there. See if I can do this without breaking it or cutting it in half. There we go. Okay, now I'm going to try and carefully, with a newish blade, cut that bigger bit of plastic that's on there off. Using the fine side, my sanding stick, carefully sand the rest of it off. Now you want to be careful because on one side it's very, very hard to see detail mounting points for the canvas cover. So you want to be careful you don't sand those off or cut them off. You can possibly faintly see them on this side here. So be careful. So I'm going to carefully sand these off and then I'll glue it into place. Okay, so I got the part cleaned up. Now, just as a note, because the contours of this bulge right here in front of the hatch and above the gun, the bow machine gun, you're gonna have to do some bending of this part. As you can see, it's no longer flat, but you're gonna have to bend it up a little bit, which is easy to do because it's so thin, as long as you don't overstress it, so it will fit flush with the contours of the front of the hull. So it just takes a little bit of work and it can be handled reasonably well, fairly easily. And if it gets kind of weirdish looking, it's not quite 100% symmetrical like on the bottom and stuff like that, don't sweat it too much, because in photos rarely are these things totally symmetrical and precision. Some of them can be quite bent and mangled looking, but try and get as good as you can. So I've got that there. So I'm going to apply a little bit of cement on the bottom here and let it wick up through there. And then I'll just work around to get it all flush. So I'm going to let that dry for a minute. Let that dry for a minute, and then I'll continue smashing it down around the edge there. And there it is, all glued in place. Nice and snugly. A little pre-bending helps it a lot. So the next part, I need to glue the upper hull to the lower hull. See how it fits. Pretty good. And then this fits right in the front like that. Okay, so it all fits. It all fits well. Let's see, let's check and make sure that that's all nice and snug in the front. Doesn't look like it really matters which order you do it in, whether it's the back and then the transmission cover or what. It looks like you can do it either way. So I think what I'll do is I'll glue this in place first. And let that dry really well, and then I think what I'll do, good Lord. I think what I'll do is I'll do one side at a time. So I can get everything pulled together nice and snug. You know what? Get some clamps here. Whoa, no, that's not going to work. So I'm just going to have to let that dry like that. Then I'll do the other side here because there's a little bit of a gap. So I want to make sure this one's anchored in there really well. And then I'll do the other side. So I'm going to let that dry for a minute. Okay, so I got the front end all glued into position nicely, and everything is fitting. The front fits really well. So I'm not saying nothing. Sorry, people. I'm talking to my wife on the other side of the window here. I didn't give the heads up that I'm doing a video, so she can do whatever she wants. That's her cackling maniacally in the background. Sorry for the extra entertainment, guys, but hey, there it is. So anyway, let's see. So this is ready to glue into place. Man, these things fit together ever so swellly. I think that's a real word. So I'm going to start cementing this baby together. Start at the front, thusly. Hold it in place. Glue the back. These upper holes fit onto the lower really, really well. All right, so that is glued into place like that. So with that, that finishes page 4, which is the front and the hull and some of the hull details. So with that, I can end this video here before it gets too obscenely long, and come back next time for the hatches, more of the upper hull, front and rear details. So that's it for now on the viewer's choice Eduard M4A1 Sherman project. Questions, comments, any of that kind of stuff, please put them in the comments below. I'll get back to you as quick as I can. So until next time on Plastic Models by a Regular Dude, I will see you all later.